All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Huru. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, as we always do, make sure you go to dynastymirror.com. Again, make sure you go to dynastymirror.com. While you're there, check out the store. Also, make sure you join the email list. Again, join the email list so you guys can stay up to date in regards to what's going on with the brand Dynasty Mirror. Also, like, share, and subscribe to the content. Again, like, share, and subscribe to the content. We will really appreciate you guys' support. And then become a monthly Patreon. Patreon.com, search for Huru. Patreon.com, search for Huru. Become a monthly Patreon, you guys. Continue to support Black media so we can continue to share our narrative and tell our story. Today's topic, should Black people feel entitled? Somebody in the chat room is already saying you can feel entitled, but I doubt it'll make you a better person. So we have Mr. Collie Brown on with us today. And we're gonna unpackage this. It's a very interesting topic. So Mr. Brown, go ahead, introduce yourself, and let's jump right into it.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for this opportunity. Again, it's always a pleasure to appear on the program. And to your audience, I thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. But before I kind of jump into that, I have a couple of questions. So the first question I have is, if you were given $1 million, $1 million US, what would you do with it? So I would like if you could just put in the chat session what you would do with $1 million. Would you buy a house? What would you do with $1 million United States dollars? So we're going to look at those and see what people say they're going to be using it for. So it's going to be interesting to see what people, each person, what they would say with $1 million, right? So the other thing that I want to just mention here is this entitled. What is the meaning of entitled? What's the definition of entitled? I'm actually going to read it so that you get the exact definition. So the meaning of entitlement is believing oneself to be inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. Believing oneself to be deserving of privileges or special treatment. The one that most people focus on, or the part that most people focus on, is the special treatment.
Right.
The part that I want to focus on is the privileges part, deserving of privileges. What's a privilege? A privilege is the opportunity to do something that isn't normally done, right? So the flying on an airplane is a privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege. Because the majority of the people in the world has never been on an airplane. It's a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
Going to a top class university is also a privilege. Having a beautiful home is a privilege.
Right.
All of those that I just mentioned are privileges. So let's go back and read the definition of privilege again. Because, believing oneself to be inherently deserving of privileges. Now, let me ask the question. The things that I just mentioned, the good school, plane ride, are you thinking that you're deserving of that? Because I have news for you. If you don't think you're entitled, if you don't believe you're entitled to these things, let me tell you what's going to happen. And there's evidence to back it up. Dennis, if I came to your house right now and said to take your car, I'm going to have a problem.
Right.
Because it's your car. And you're going to say to me, hey, what are you doing with my car? You can't do that. And if I persist in trying to take the car, you're going to put a beating on me and call the cops.
Right.
It's because you think you're entitled. In fact, it's your understanding that you're entitled to that car because you paid for it. So because you think you're entitled to that car and no one else can just walk in and take that car, you don't sit by idly while when I come and try to take your car. So it's a privilege, the privilege of owning the car, that is causing you to react the way you react. If that car was, let's say, a stolen car, I'd probably be able to walk in, take the car, and you say nothing, because you know if you say something, you're probably going to get in trouble.
Right.
So you just think about what I just said here. So the fact that you think you're entitled to have that car and for that car to stay in your garage, you're going to use that as a motivating factor to prevent me from taking that car. In other words, you're going to fight for the bloody thing. So if you don't think, for example, that you're entitled to a good school, you're not going to fight for it.
Right.
Right? And that's the reality of life. Anything that you think you're entitled to, you're going to protect it. Now, the word entitled, oftentimes when we hear it with respect to other people. They feel they're entitled. They feel they're this. They feel they're that. And we react to it that way because we don't feel we're entitled. We feel that we have to struggle because if we felt that we were entitled, we'd say, well, yeah, they're entitled and we're entitled. Right? That's one of the big differences between how others see life and how we see life. They believe that they are entitled to go to the best schools, get the best jobs, get the best salaries, right? Live in the best neighborhoods. They believe that's their right. And by that, they're going to fight for it. If you try to take it from them, they're going to fight you for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if your interests come up against theirs, they're going to fight you for it as well. Now, the part, as I said, that people focus on is the one where, special treatment. That's the one where I think get, entitled. They've corrupted entitlement and just focus on the special treatment. That's the one most people focus on. But even that one, you're entitled to special treatment. Well, you say, well, okay, everybody's entitled to special treatment. Yes, but it depends on the context. So if I walk into your house, I have to show you respect. But if I walk, if somebody else comes into your house, I don't necessarily have to show them the respect. But if I walk into your house, you're entitled to be shown respect. That's a special privilege because of the circumstances. So even something that's special privilege. So that's the first part. We have to begin to adjust, how we see ourselves, because that is going to dictate what we do, right? And how we perceive what we fight for, what we don't fight for, what we, right? The second thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to touch on these as we go along through this thing. The second thing I want to talk about is a thing called group dynamics. We touched on that, Dynast, earlier. Remember when we had a conversation, I think earlier this week, early this week, right?
Uh-huh.
And you were describing to me the fact that you were at this company and you're trying to get into this other company and the person did nothing for you.
Right, yes.
Okay. They're not understanding what group dynamics is. So what is group dynamics? What's the definition of group dynamics? Group dynamics is how groups interact. In other words, groups are usually formed for a purpose. A family group is formed to protect the family and to nurture it and to create a path for the next generation. But nature has groups as well. Insects, they're groups. And one of the things you'll learn about insects and animals is they take their group pretty serious. And you're going to see why it's important, this group dynamics. Because if we don't understand group dynamics, then we won't participate in the group the way we should, and we won't get the results that we really expect and we really should get. Remember, all of this is leading up to the fact that we talked about the, privileges, right? One is deserving of these privileges because you are special, but most people don't think that way. So let's go back to the group. So you have an ant. You ever notice with an ant, if they find a grain of sugar someplace or some kind of a food source, that within a matter of minutes, there's a whole line of ants coming towards that.
A matter of seconds.
A matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And what they understand, and by the way, that's why they've survived millions of years. Insects have survived millions of years, longer than humans. But the reason they thrive so well, right? Even though they don't have internet or whatever, right? The reason why they thrive so well is because they understand group dynamic.
Right.
They understand that if they find a resource that is of value to the hive, to the nest, you have to. It's your responsibility to make sure you go out there and mark a trail so that all the other ants can walk and follow that trail.
We failed at that. We failed.
That's why they have a gland at their tail, and they use that gland to mark the path. That's why they can, you'll see a stream of them, and they're not deviating from that stream. But what that means, though, is that in a matter of minutes, that food source is gone. It's back at the hive. It's back at the nest. Bees are the same thing. Lots of insects use that. But let's go a little step further into the animal kingdom. Lions. So you ever notice that, if you watch nature shows like I do, you see lions and they are out there hunting. What typically happens? Well, oftentimes it's the female in the lion population that do the hunting, but there's usually 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 of them. And what happens when you have 6 or 7 lions on the prowl looking for meal? They're bringing back something. You can almost take it to the bank, they're going to bring back something.
Right.
Because an individual lion is no match for 4 or 5 lions.
Mm-hmm.
And a big buffalo that can destroy a lion is no match for 6 or 7 lions.
Right.
Right? Group dynamics. In other words, the group is far more powerful than the individual. Right? So, when you look at it from that perspective, you realize a group is a powerful tool. So if you stick with me a second, I'm going somewhere with this because...
Right. One second, Collie. Guys, make sure you hit that like button again. Hit the like button. Guys, if you're watching this, please hit that like button. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
So this group dynamic is a critical part of the message this evening. Because those who understand the group dynamic and execute it reap the benefits of it. So the lion cubs reap the benefit of it because 6 or 7 lions are going to go out and bring back a buffalo. That's enough food for probably 2-3 days, right? But I'm going to describe something. As powerful as a lion is, and as majestic as a lion is, 1 lion is no match for 6 hyenas or 7 or 8 hyenas.
Right.
10 hyenas will destroy even a male lion. Oftentimes, the male lions run away. That's what typically happens. And the hyenas will steal the catch or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Because group dynamics is far more powerful. Individually, or even 2 or 3 hyenas is no match for a lion, especially a male lion. But group dynamics says, you can't pay attention to all of us. And so while you're trying to eat, this one is trying to bite your tail, this one is trying to nip at you, and they annoy you so much, you end up leaving the meal.
Collie, you want to address this? Well, finish your statement, then you want to address this this statement. The problem is we are looking for entitlement in a white world. That will never happen. But go ahead and finish your statement.
What was the question?
The problem is we are looking for entitlement in a white world. That will never happen.
Okay, I get that. I hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. So this group dynamic is a powerful tool, right? And we see that it's very, very effective. Now, group dynamics also exist in humans. Group dynamics also exist in humans. No matter where you are in the world, you're part of a group. You're part of a family. You're part of a community. Mm-hmm. You're part of a church, a mosque. It doesn't matter. You're part of a group. You're part of many groups. So group dynamics kick in. But the part of group dynamics that I want to focus on is not those bigger groups. The part of group dynamics I want to talk about and focus on in this thing, because Vision 2020, for those of you who don't know, Vision 2020 is an initiative that my company has, and the idea is to teach people to write code. And you can, by the way, go there online. It's argon.com/Vision 2020. Just go to argon.com, scroll down to Vision 2020. But you'll see why I'm talking about this group dynamics, because not understanding group dynamics is severely affecting us. Whether you are in Africa, you're in the United States, no matter where you are, it is affecting us. And we may think it's not affecting us, but the results speak for themselves. One of the things, Dynast, is they did a research on, there's a phenomenon called gaining weight while dieting.
Okay.
Gaining weight while dieting. That's a weird thing to say, right? You're gaining weight while dieting. But what they actually did was they actually asked people who are dieting, how much did you actually eat? And almost to a person, they said they ate X amount. I'm just going to pick a number. Let's say 400 calories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if they're eating 400 calories? Why are they gaining weight? Something is wrong. Is their body adjusting to the fact that they're eating less and is conserving more? What exactly is happening? So they decided to measure the people, measure exactly what they ate. And you see, all those people who were talking about that they only ate 400 calories, it turns out they were eating 900 calories. Mm-hmm. But and that's a phenomenon in humans, right? That's a phenomenon in humans. But guys, bear with me a second. It matters what I'm saying here because you need the scientific basis for this, for the next points I'm going to make. And the points I'm going to make is much more related to you. But I want you to understand so that we don't keep fooling ourselves as humans. We have to face who we are as humans, right? And understand where our weaknesses are, and then we can strengthen them, right? We can strengthen it. So they actually did a test, a measurement, and they realized people were eating more. Let me give you an example. So people, they're eating salad, right? And they pile up a plate of salad, like, okay, I'm dieting, so I can eat a lot of salad. But what they actually did was they poured on all that salad dressing, which has a lot of oil in it, has a lot of calories. So whether they did it consciously or not, they were gaining weight because they were eating all these things. Numbers don't lie, guys. Numbers don't lie. Whether you, me, or any one of us, numbers don't lie. Right. We can try to misinterpret it. We can try to do other things with it, but it doesn't lie. So we introduced Vision 2020 to teach people to write code. Now, people who understand technology also understand that it's a very lucrative field. And as I said to you, Dynast, before the conversation got started, almost everything a modern society does is built on technology. The powerful system we have, the phone, the internet, everything is built on technology. So there's no modern society that will function without that. And when we can tap in, we as African Americans, we as Black people across the diaspora, we as Africans, when we can tap into that technology base. I mentioned to you earlier that artificial intelligence, when it's fully mature, will be about a $19 trillion market. I also mentioned to you that Industrial Revolution came and Africa was a victim of it because they ended up splitting up Africa in the 1830s and the resources went to Europe to provide raw material. Mm-hmm. Then the internet revolution came along, and right now the platform we're on, we don't own. We don't own Facebook. We don't own Instagram. You get the idea. We don't own any of those. And why aren't we owning those? Is it that we are not savvy enough, smart enough, or we don't have the opportunity? A lot of people say, no, we don't have the opportunity. Well, if we don't have the opportunity, we're going to have to simply make it. Because the alternative is to say we'll never own it. Right? Dynast, you built your platform one conference like this at a time.
Right.
There are many things that are taking your attention, but you didn't have to do all of this. But you have a mission and a vision for what you're trying to do. So you create an opportunity. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what you did. So I'm saying to people that this opportunity, this technology opportunity, and it doesn't really matter because if you're a doctor, that's technology, right? And by the way, most medicine today is going to be built around technology. When you go to the doctor, you get an X-ray. A doctor looks at it through the light. That is going to be done by a machine. So a lot of the things that we see today, those are going to be technology-driven. That's a whole industry. Is that your business? Are you in the optics business that you can create a platform and before you know it, you're looking at your company is looking at 5 million X-rays, and you're making $1 billion. You can do this. We can do this, but we have to understand the group dynamics thing. So let's go back to the group dynamics. So when we introduce Vision 2020, it's a very exciting opportunity to be able to learn to write code. Every single one of those platforms I mentioned earlier were started by teenagers. Facebook, teenager, dropout, college dropout. Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. All these platforms were started by teenagers. How did they get to start these platforms? Did somebody give them an extra brain that we don't have? Or were they in an environment that fostered it? That's where the group dynamic comes in. So when we talk about Vision 2020 and we say, look, you can go write code. Dynast, how old is your son? Because I know you have a son.
He's 6.
Okay. Do you know that in Harlem right now, Harlem, United States, that there are 6 and 7-year-olds that they're teaching Mandarin and Japanese, both to speak it and to write it? I watched a 60-minute program, and they actually had it was one of those little, what do you call those schools? Charter schools or something like that. And the reporter went to the classroom, and the kids said in Chinese. Now, people are going to, guys, don't focus on Chinese. The fact that what I'm trying to get to you is the fact that these kids are learning a complex language, and they're 6 or 7 years old. So the reporter, so they greeted the reporter appropriately. And then when the reporter was leaving the classroom, the reporter turned to the principal and said, "Those are 2 hard languages." And the principal turned to the reporter and said, "They don't know. They don't know it's hard. They just learn it." Think about what the reporter said. The reporter said, "It's hard." It's a subjective thing. That is her applying her difficulty to learn a language and saying, if it's hard for me, it's hard for them. And the principal pushing back saying, no, these kids don't know it's hard. They think it's just another language you learn as anybody else. Notice the difference. So that mindset from the principal empowered the kids to learn the language, and they were speaking it. That's why the woman said, wow, it's hard. How can they do it? So if a 6-year-old can learn 2 languages, different, they use hieroglyphics, not hieroglyphics, but they use a glyph, which is like drawings, right? There's no pictures, right? There's really are pictures. Right. But the point is, it's not our Latin grammar or letters. And so what I'm saying here is, if a 6-year-old or 7-year-old can learn that, then programming is just another language, just like any other language, right? So I'm saying that your son can start learning to write code. Now, is he going to write some fancy program? No. But that's not the point. The point of the matter is, if he starts now, by the time he has some sense, serious sense, I mean, like 10 years old or so, he's already been programming for a couple of years. It's like second nature, right? And I'm going to use a reference point that everybody understands. Everybody knows who Serena Williams is, and everybody should know who Venus Williams is, right?
Right.
Their dad was watching TV one day, and they saw these kids playing tennis. And then when it was finished, it was the final. They walked up and they got a check for, I think it's like $100,000. And he almost fell off his chair, like, dude, somebody's actually giving that kind of money for that thing. I'm going to teach my kids. And he goes out the next day and buys some rackets. And he had 3 dogs at the time. And he said, look, I'm going to teach you guys to play tennis. And every single one of the kids turned it down. They're like, Dad, no, that's not for us. They started playing a little bit, but they got bored. And they quit. But he didn't stop there. So he had 2 younger kids, almost baby at that point. And he decided he's going to teach them. And guess what? They learned, and they took to it like duck to water. What if he had given up after the first 3? And because they learned at such a young age, they didn't even realize how good they were. It's when they were playing junior champions that they realized, damn, we were good. We were beating up all these people. The point there is that determination and seeing it through to the end is a trait that most people don't have. That is why, and we can change it. Everything I'm telling you here, we can adjust it, right? There is nothing I'm telling you here that if you fall on the wrong side of it, that you can't correct it. I'm saying You can correct it, right? Because oftentimes we look for excuses why we can't do something. We say, the kid is too young, he can't learn this thing. No, he may be able to write, a tiny little program that is that just do, display his name. But you come back in 6 months or a year, and next thing you know, he's showing you all kinds of cool stuff, right? And I say this because when my daughter was 2 years old, I came home, and this was back in the day. And I came home, and she was on a computer. I don't know how she learned to turn it on. I don't know how she logged in. I don't know anything about that. All I know is she was there by herself doing this thing. And I almost fell off my chair because I couldn't believe. And I kept asking, so how did you do this? And she was like, oh yeah, I did this. Because she observed what I was doing. Kids are much smarter, much more savvy than us. So let's go back to the group dynamics that we talked about, right? So we introduced Vision 2020 to, it's out there. You can go online and you can sign up. It takes a couple of seconds to sign up, right? What happens is we can tell at Argonne what group or what community Vision 2020 is in. So Dynast, if you are in Oakland, California, and you sign up, I can tell from back our server that you are in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in Amarillo, Texas, I can tell. If you are in Accra, Ghana, I can tell. Now let me describe something to you that we have observed. And this is, guys, I don't want people coming to beat me up for what I'm about to say. This is an observation. This is empirical evidence, right? So it is what it is. Take it or leave it, but it is what it is. So Dynast, when Vision 2020 dropped into certain neighborhoods, and I'm not going to name them, but I think people will be smart enough to figure out.
Right. Yeah.
We see that it starts to spread. And the way we know it starts to spread. So Dynast, if you live on 100 Main Street in your particular town,
right,
and we introduce Vision 2020 to you, and all of a sudden we see right around it a bunch of people started doing Vision 2020. We know what? It must have been Dynast, or that there's a group dynamic taking place here. Somebody in the group is telling somebody, right?
Right.
When it drops into quite a few neighborhoods, right? It spreads, and it spreads rapidly. When it falls into our neighborhood, and I'm talking about both online, both in America and in Africa, because we have people signed up from quite a few countries in Africa. It stays in that one group, and apparently they tell nobody about it. They tell no. In other words, the other groups are telling people clearly, because you can see that all of a sudden other people are signing up. So whether they're friends or neighbors or part of a church or a mosque or a temple or whatever the case may be, the point is that it's spreading, and we can observe that. We can look at it. We can look at the rate of spread. We can look at how it spreads out. In fact, there's a whole science around something like that. Mm-hmm. Not that we worry about that. I'm just telling you that we are observing it. So let me describe to you. Let's go back to the group dynamics and show you why understanding group dynamics is going to make a big difference. So imagine somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, Collie, here's a thing called Vision 2020, and it will teach you to write code. And by the way, programming pays really, really well, right? C++ programmer in the United States makes over 100 grand. Guys, that's the facts. You can go online and look it up. It's just, I'm not telling you anything you can't. Google. In the United Kingdom, it's around $80,000. But I'm here to tell you that no matter what country you are in, programmers make more money than the average salary, than the median salary. So it's a lucrative field. So anyway, somebody tells me about Vision 2020, and I said, "Oh, cool! I'm gonna sign my kid up." So I signed my kid up, and my kid now starts to do this thing. But after about 3 months, they're like, "Dad, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore," and they quit. That's, remember, most people, who start things never finish it. So that's a typical example of what happens, right? So I told my kid this. I never told anybody else. I just told my kid this because I'm looking out for my family's interest. I want my son or my daughter to be a great programmer,
right,
and get a good salary. I'm looking up for my family. That's a good thing. Switch over to a different group, and that's told to another adult like myself, but in that group. But because their group dynamic is different from ours, in other words, they like to share. So when you see one, before you know it, you're going to see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So imagine, we were told the same time. My kid 6 months later is like, this is not for me. But their group, right? That group has 6 or 7 kids in it. So the person who was told initially, their kid, just like my kid, says, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not for me. It's kind of boring, right? Because that's how kids operate, right? They don't know long term, to stick to things. If it's not exciting, they get bored. But anyway, in that group, the one whose parent it was introduced to quit. But what happens is he or she has 4 or 5 friends who are still doing this thing. So at some point down the road, one of them have a brilliant idea. I'm going to create a Facebook too in Africa. I'm going to create a Facebook too in Africa. What happens? Let's look at the group dynamics. Well, if you look at any...
Hey, Collie, one second. Like, people are wanting to know how this connects with entitlement, like the topic. Like, I just
the entitled. And so the way it ties to it is what you fight for, but you need the tools to fight. So, in other words, I started out by saying, should you believe? Do you believe you should be entitled, or should you believe you're entitled? Well, if you don't believe you're entitled, no matter what comes your way, no matter what opportunities come your way, someone can come in and block you because you're not going to fight back because you do not think you're entitled. Because I'm getting this with this. I'm going to get to that connection because when you see, so this kid, the other kid, one of them have this great idea. They're going to start this thing called Facebook too. But like any other group, you always start off with the people around you. So you remember the original kid that was introduced in that group, Dynast, that the one that quit in the other group, just like how my kid quit? Mm-hmm. Because his friends were doing this and it was his parents who introduced them. It turns out that that kid is not good at programming or anything like that, but he's good at marketing stuff. So typically what happens is when you start a company or any kind of company, you usually pick the people around you. In other words, that group dynamic increases the odds of success because more people are taking a shot at it. The long and short of what I'm saying to you is, when you get a new idea and you decide it's just for you and you're not going to share it with anybody else, you are decreasing the chance that you're going to have success. Because as much as we want to believe that our kid is the genius and they're going to do everything, that's not the reality of life. The reality of life is that your kid might not be the particular expert on that thing. But why should your kid miss out on that opportunity when one of their friends, one of his or her friends, could be the one who had the great idea and your kid is the one who's a great marketer? Group dynamics. In other words, the same way the Lions ensure that the pride does well, the Cubs do well, by making sure that collectively they go after it. We, as African Americans, as Black people, in other words, you gotta start supporting your own. You gotta start supporting your own people. One of the things we do not do is support our own people. Mm-hmm. And we talk and we say, but the numbers don't lie. I'm saying, Dennis has a show here, and you come here and you watch it all the time. How many people did you share it with? These are uncomfortable questions to ask, but Dennis, that's the reality of life. How many people, I'm not trying to create a problem. I'm just simply saying that in order for Dynast to grow to where his program needs to go, you have to do your part to share it, right? You have to tell others about it so that he can have a bigger audience, right? In other words, the group dynamics have to kick in. Going back to should you feel entitled? Question. Do you think that you're entitled to a job paying 100 grand or more? Do you think if you're in Africa that you're entitled to a job paying at least 50,000 US dollars? Do you think that if you are in any country as a black person that you're entitled to be a CEO? Do you think that your kids, as I said earlier, is entitled to go to the best school? If you say no to any of those, you're not going to fight for it. We have what we call false humility, and it's taught to us from a very young age, especially in the church. You see it among church people.
Right.
Right? You see it among church people. I call it false humility. And the false humility is that we don't tout our own horn, but everybody else touts their own horn.
Right.
If we don't tout our own horn, who's going to tout it for us? Our false humility hasn't done anything for us. It hasn't created a platform from which we can build. It hasn't created a platform through which others can benefit. It hasn't created a platform through which our kids and the next generation can thrive. If we do not think we're entitled to something, we're not going to fight for it. If you do not believe, when I came to this country, I'm not going to be ashamed of how I grew up. I grew up okay, comfortable, not rich by any means. But I was taught at a very early age that by my dad, that if you can solve problems for people, they'll pay you for it. And if the problems are big enough and important enough, they'll pay you even more money. And God help you if you're the only one who can solve their problem. Then you really got them over about it. I was told at a very young age that you're entitled to a damn good job. I'm entitled to a really good school. And you know what? That's what I got. And that's what I provided for my next generation. Are you going to tell me that your kids are not entitled to a good school? Or are you going to tell me, our dynast, that you're not, dynast, your kid is entitled to go to the best school that money can buy. Mm-hmm. He's not deficient. Why shouldn't he be entitled to go to the best schools that money can buy? The best universities, the best jobs. Come out one day and be CEO of something. Or better yet, owner of something. Right? When we as a group starts to understand that the group dynamics, coupled with the belief that we are entitled, when we apply those two together, because they go together, okay? Because as I said, a individual and dynast, the situation you're telling me with the person with the job. Mm-hmm. I have a question for your audience. If a job opening right now came on your job, 3 levels above you, in other words, your boss's boss's boss, and you knew about the job, and you had a friend who's qualified for that job, a friend that looks like you, qualified for that job, would you bring in the resume to that job? Would you go in and try to talk to your boss to get your friend hired?
Yeah, I would.
You would. But what was your experience, Dynast?
My other friends wouldn't. They told me the go through, go to the website and fill out the application and hopefully you get a phone call.
So, like you, Dynast, I went on a job interview years ago, and I thought the job interview went great. It was two people, one that looked like us and a white person. And so did the interview. The questions they were asking were simple questions. The white person left the room, and it was just me and this African American. I'm going to say African American, but I don't think he was African American. He was some other country. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point of the matter is that he looked like me. Mm-hmm. And so he started asking more questions, and I wasn't even thinking. I just kept answering because to me he was simply not right. But at some point, I kind of realized something is wrong here. Why is he pushing and asking all these questions? The other guy came back and said, why are you asking him all these questions? It was a competition. And I did not realize it was a competition. I just thought, hey, we have somebody there that look like me, they're going to fight for me.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out, what I ended up doing was I ended up telling that person, give him the finger, so to speak, and walked out and said, keep your job. That is my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was a young man, and that gentleman in that place, in that job that I went for, don't understand group dynamics. Because if it were other groups, that I would have been a lock, shoot in. And we need to start to face reality that we as a group aren't doing what we should do as a group. We're not looking out for each other and fighting for each other like our lives depend on it. Right? So when you learn something new, when you come across a new technology, like I said, it might not be necessarily your kid's cup of tea, but at the end of the day, what's going to happen is if your kid's friends, you introduce to them and they come up with some brilliant idea later on, your kid is going to benefit because it's their friends. And that increases the likelihood of success for your family and for the group. Right?
Right.
Vision 2020 is part of what we call the legacy project. The legacy project is we as Black folk create things, businesses and opportunities that last more than one generation. One of the things I get asked all the time is, will you sell? 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 And I keep asking people, if every one of us who makes something sell, what happens?
We have that.
Where does your kid go for a job? That is, where does your son go for a job? Can you pick up the phone and call, Brad and ask Brad for a job? You can't. And my point is this. There's nothing wrong in selling a business. But what we have to, we don't even, in technology, especially in major technology, we are underrepresented. We're underrepresented as workers. We are underrepresented as owners. We're totally underrepresented. And it's not that we can't do this thing. All of us can do it. Some of the sharpest people I know are Africans. And yet, when we look at, and by the way, the internet, a good chunk of it was created by an African.
Right.
Right? So just so everybody knows, we create the platform. Why aren't we benefiting the same on it? It goes back to, do you think you are entitled? And if you believe you're entitled, you're going to fight for it. One of the things that you see women, and I'm speaking to women right now, but also to you men. Before 1960, I'm going to assume people saw the movie Hidden Figures. It's about these group of Black women who did calculations for NASA to bring to when the Apollo mission was going to the moon the first time. And if you notice anything about the movie, you notice it was all women doing the calculations. Well, let me just throw in something here. Prior to 1960, a lot of the calculations on advanced math were done by women. This idea that women can't do technology and can't do science is a recent phenomenon. Now, let me tell you how it came about. Any new field that's discovered, including AI, if there is money to be made in there, certain groups of people dominate it and push everybody else out. Right? So that is how we end up with where we are. So people are now thinking that women can't do science. Women can't do math. And the history doesn't prove that. The history says that's not true. So I'm saying and I'm speaking because I'm in the technology world, right? And I'm not talking about just programming. I'm talking about, bioscience. I'm talking anything to do with technology, right? Because as I said, a lot of technology, a lot of science, a lot of medicine is, AI right now is doing diagnosis for medication, for diseases.
Right.
AI is doing that, right? So when I'm talking about AI, I don't think just programmer, right? It's a much bigger field, but programming is a start. It's an entry into that field. It pays a good salary, right? Because if you can The other little secret that's not that's kind of kept is that they say you need a program, a degree. You don't need a program, a degree. Did Mark Zuckerberg have a degree when he started Facebook at 19?
Nope.
Okay. When did Mark Zuckerberg, by the way, learn to write code? Does anybody know when Mark Zuckerberg learned to write code?
Did he? Well, he copied somebody's code. I mean, he was learning that in Harvard.
He wrote code. He wrote code.
The
argument was that they came to him. He wrote the code, but it was their idea. That was the fuss.
Right.
The fuss was they came to him because he was the one who could write code, and they couldn't write code. So then they're saying it's our idea, and he stole it. That's what they were basically saying.
Right.
But he learned to write code when he was 13 years old. 13, 1-3. What grade is that? What grade is that, Diners? 7?
Seventh, eighth grade, yeah.
7th grade. Mm-hmm. Bill Gates, when he started Microsoft at the age of 14, when did he learn to write code?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think he was 9.
Oh, wow.
I'm telling you these things so that people understand when I'm talking. I'm not just saying something here. I'm saying I've seen so many smart African kids, but the people around them are not believers in them. And I'm saying that's got to stop, because the fact of the matter is that a 13-year-old can write pretty good code. Bill Gates, to go back to group dynamics, when he wanted to start Microsoft, mm-hmm. Who did he pick? He picked his friend Paul Allen. Well, actually, it was his teacher, Paul Allen.
Okay.
Do you know the name Steve Ballmer?
I know Steve Ballmer owns the Seahawks or the Clippers, right?
Yes. He was the guy who basically built Microsoft into where Microsoft is. Mm-hmm. He was Bill Gates' good buddy from elementary school. Mm-hmm. Remember we talked about that group dynamics? When one person in the group succeeds, they bring their friends around.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, guys. That's what we're talking about. So Bill Gates had this great idea, right? And again, I'm not into the argument of did he write the software or did he copy the software or did he buy the software? That's immaterial. The point of the matter is he started it at 12 years old. And you know what? If he was able to steal it at 12, more power to him. That means he was even more of a genius. But the point is that he started at 12. And like, any good group dynamic, he picked the people around him. So Paul Allen was one of his teachers. And he and Paul Allen write some software for his school, for his high school. Right? And then he went and got his buddy Steve Ballmer to come in and help him run Microsoft. So the fact of the matter is, it's that group dynamic. So because, by the way, Steve Ballmer worth about 16 billion. The point I'm making is when you learn something new and you introduce not just your kid, but your kid's friends to it, you increase the odds, right? You increase the odds. So let's go back over this. You got to think and you got to believe you're entitled. Because if you believe you're entitled, you're going to fight for it.
Right.
And the question was, that was the question. Should black people be entitled? Be entitled? Yes. The answer is absolutely overwhelmingly yes.
Right.
Right? A good education, guys, is not a luxury. Right? Sending your kid to an excellent school is not a luxury. Your kid starting a company, whether it's selling lemonade or packaging of African products and shipping it overseas, it's not a luxury. It's something a teenager can do. It's something a teenager can do. So at Vision 2020, as part of this legacy project, we are introducing people to write code. We're saying learn to write code because it's a $19 trillion business. Are we going to sit here and argue over stupid semantics when a multi-trillion-dollar business opportunity is sitting there? I'm not saying my company is going to get it. It may be one of your kids who learn from us, who go out there with a brilliant idea, and next thing I know, we all know they're worth XYZ. We don't know. But the one thing I set out to do was to make sure that any kid who wanted to learn to write code had the opportunity.
Right.
Vision 2020 is not free, guys. For every a couple of hundred people on it, we have to have a new server. These servers are not cheap, guys. They cost like $4 or $5 grand, right? They're not cheap. But how are we giving this out to these people? Let me tell you how we do this. How are we financing this? Well, we make our money separately. And it's a different, we have a revenue model that's very, very different. But what is important to me and to my family, and I hopefully to your family, is that if I don't provide a pathway for your kid, your nephew, your niece, somebody in your family, if I don't create a pathway for them, if I come here and I use inspirational words to say, oh, go learn to write code, like most people do. Most motivational speakers will just tell you, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. Am I like, Dynast? Most of them will tell you, but they're not going to tell you the tools. You're going to have to go figure out the tools yourself. If you want to learn to write code, you can learn to write code. Is it for everybody? No. But you don't know if you introduce your kid to this, if this is their wheelhouse or one of his or her friends. It's their wheelhouse, meaning that they take to it, and next thing you know, they have a great idea. But I thought it was important enough, and my family believes it's important enough, that we create a platform that Africa, because if you're not, there's an expression in lottery, if you're not in the game, you can't win it. You got to be in it to win it, right? When I look at the number of people, African Americans, who are writing code, it's minuscule. Minuscule. Almost every single position I've been in, I'm the only one. Really? In 2020? Seriously, guys? Are we satisfied with that? If we don't think and believe that we are entitled, are we going to fight for it? Yeah. I'm saying we should. I'm saying I am fighting for it, and I'm fighting for you.
All right.
Because Dynast is supposed to be able to pick up the phone and says, hey, Mr. Brown, I'm sending my son over. Done. He's supposed to be able to do that. You are supposed to be able to do that. Now, you may be the person they call. So when we set out, we said, look, we're not going to just tell people to write code, because that's what we were initially doing. But what we realized people weren't doing anything. They would be inspired and then go home and figure out everything else. So we decided, let's open up the environment and create a platform for that. Right? And like Richard Williams, who insisted that he was going to teach every single one of his kids to play tennis.
Right.
Right? He didn't know which one was going to be successful, but he tried every single one, and it turned out the last two. So you may have tried your kid, right? But don't just sign up your kid. Sign up your kid's friends, so that even if your kid gets discouraged, your friends, his or her friends, can encourage them.
Right.
And spread it, because that's how you increase the odds of the group succeeding. If you look into nursing in the United States, if you're a nurse, and a lot of Africans are nurses, right? What does your nursing room look like? It's probably a massive group of people that don't look like us. Because once one of them get a job, they're going to tell the next person about it, and before you know it, everybody is there. And that's a good thing from their perspective. But we need to imitate it. We can't just say things are bad or people are looking out for themselves. We have to start to do that. So my family and I set out, and as I said, Vision 2020 is not free. We have to pay a lot of money per month to keep the software running. But we believe that one of the things, Dynast, when we have interns. Mm-hmm. And when we put out interns, it's rare we get somebody that looks like us. You know how painful that is?
No.
You know how painful that is? Because the experience they're getting is going to make them, you graduate from college and you have certain experiences. You can walk into a job paying an X amount. And when we set out to do these internships, we opened up to everybody. But what I'm telling you guys, I'm not seeing enough of us. Now, I've been in the business for 35 years, so I know what I'm saying. Coming up to the ranks, I realized that there are not a lot of us. So Vision 2020, as part of this legacy project, is its mission is to create a platform where kids I don't know, families I don't know, people I don't know, but people who look like us can find a place where they can at least introduce their kid to a potential career. And you don't need a college degree because Mark Zuckerberg never had one.
Right.
Nor did Bill Gates. Right? They didn't have college degrees. Right? But they were successful. Right? Because it's a skill. Programming is a skill. It's a language like anything else. You can speak French. Many of your audience speak 2, 3 different languages. Mm-hmm. That is sophisticated thinking. So they can learn another one. COVID-19 has impacted our community on a larger scale than everybody else.
All right.
So many of us there are no jobs to go back to. What are you going to do at downtime? Are you going to sit there and say, okay, I'm fired, I'm not going to do anything else? Get a skill. Try something new. You might be surprised you go in there and you like it. Right? Because, we can't sit here, guys, and say we're victims. We have some control over it, right? And so I'm imploring you guys. You can clearly see, I'm imploring people, Dynast, to step up. Because when your programs create a lot of knowledge.
Right.
The question is, are people acting on it? Because it's one thing for you to provide all this platform and this knowledge to the people, but it's another thing if the people are using it. And I'm saying, take advantage of what Dynast is doing. Dynast didn't have to do this, right? You wouldn't have heard about Vision 2020, at least not on this platform, without Dynast. Is your kid going to be, okay, you say, well, my kid's going to be a doctor. That's what you say. Okay, my kid's going to be a doctor. I don't have to introduce him to this. Well, let me tell you something. When I was 10 years old, I said I was going to be a pilot. There was a little crop duster that used to fly over my house. It turns out my friend's dad was flying it. But that little crop duster told me I wanted to be a pilot. It inspired me to be a pilot. And when I came to America to go fly with the airlines. Again, you can do that. It's a career. It pays pretty good money too. But that's not what I'm doing for a living. People change. So the more you can expose them to opportunities, the better their chance of success, because they may say they want to be a doctor and then change their mind. But what are they going to fall back on? Right? The group dynamics, I keep coming back. You need to be entitled. You need to feel that you're entitled. You need to believe and you need to fight like you're entitled, because you are entitled. Every other group, or I shouldn't say every other group, but lots of other groups believe they're entitled.
All right.
Why shouldn't we feel like we're entitled and we can go out there and go to Harvard or go to the University of Ghana, of Accra, and other universities, the best university that's in, let's say, Lagos.
Unilag.
Why not your kid, right? So let me kind of bring this to a sort of circle. I started out by asking the question: if you had $1 million, what would you do with the $1 million? What were some of the answers, Dynast?
Some said buy land overseas. Some said pay off their debt. Some said buy life insurance. Some said buy a triplex or a duplex.
Awesome. All right. So the good news is your audience is a savvy audience. They're not going to blow the money. That's a good one, right? Now, conspicuously from that, you didn't hear anybody say necessarily, but they might be one or two in the audience, I'm sure, who said, look, that money, that $1 million is what I was looking for because I have a business idea that I started already and it just needs funding to take it to the next level. Okay, and if this was a platform, a different platform, or a different audience, or a different group of people, you'd hear a lot more of that. Basically, though, I'm glad that people just decide they're going to blow the money, right? Again, I expect you have a very sophisticated audience, so I certainly didn't expect them to say they're going to blow the money. But
whoa. Some said go to Colombia and Brazil and buy the finest, you know what?
Well, you know what? If they're young, I can excuse it.
That's what's up there.
Yeah, when you're young, you do stupid things, right? But you can't do that when you get to a certain age. But the bottom line is though that what we didn't hear a lot of is investment and how you're going to invest it. And I think you had a program early on. We're talking about investing. We have to start to think about the future because that's why we call Vision 2020 the legacy project. Everybody knows what a legacy is, right? Something you leave behind for not just you but for others, right?
Right.
So the idea here is that when you get a skill, you teach the skill to others, or you share that skill with others. When you come across valuable information, when someone like Dennis walks up to you and says, "Hey, can you get me a job at your workplace?" You go out of your way to get his resume, and you go upstairs and you beg your boss. You just don't just hand it off and say, "I've done my thing." No, you're going to say, "Boss, it's a really good person."
Right.
It's a really good person.
And that's what they do. That's why I was so upset when I approached several people in regards to being employed at their company, and they just gave me the check the box. Oh, fill out your resume, or oh, you need sales experience, or go online, fill out your resume, or oh, you need sales experience. I can't do nothing for you. And I'm just like, oh man.
Yeah, and look how disappointing that was. And the truth be told is, it was disappointing. Even years later, hearing it, it still disappoints me.
Yeah.
Years later, and I'm saying, guys, we like to talk and like to believe that we are the ones who would go out of our way. Are we? Are we really? Would you go out of your way and beg your boss to get your friend in the door? And if your friend was going to make 3 times what you make, would you still continue to beg? Would you still implore your boss to hire your friend who's going to make 3 times what you make? Better yet, let me flip the question around. How many people you know who do that for you? Because people get defensive. They think, "Oh, I would do that. All of us would do that." The same way if you tell people, "Do you hear something good? Do you share it?" They say, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Well, okay, the evidence don't match it up. We can look at the numbers, and we see that the numbers don't match up. We see that when it falls into other communities, it spreads faster." And I'm saying, it's not that the communities are any more necessarily more organized than us. They just believe that once you find something good, you share it. So you're hearing about Vision 2020 now. Or who are you going to tell? Or are you just going to introduce your kid to it? And if your kid decides that's not what I want to do 6 months from now, your investment in terms of Vision 2020 is gone? Or are you going to say, "Hey, you know what? I am going to get my kid started on this. I don't care. Let them play. Let them play around the computer. I don't care." Right? It doesn't cost us anything necessarily more for your kid to come in there and doodle around. What I'm getting at is familiarity. Sometimes you're playing with something and you don't know the value of it, and then all of a sudden one day a little bulb go off in your head or an idea, right? If Tiger Woods' dad didn't introduce him to tennis, to golf at a very young age, right? I think he was probably about 3 when he gave him a little plastic putter, right? And he was doing it. Guys, this is not about Tiger Woods. What I'm trying to explain to you is the dynamics of what happens when a parent introduces to their kids new concepts. When I see a young, smart kid who is not being paid attention to by his or her parent, or who is not being inspired, it hurts me to see that, because I know that every single kid is smart. If you give them the chance, they can do it. They can do it. If we do not add our limitations on them, they will thrive, right? They will thrive. By the way, Dennis, if you have a question for me, by the way, that you guys want to ask me specifically, shoot the question in the email, and Dennis will just read the question.
Okay.
But right.
Or just put the just put the question in the chat room. I think we've covered the majority of the questions. I think one question in particular was your business model, revenue model. Because I know you said something like it's very different.
So I can explain the business model. Yeah. So our software is licensed by companies. That's basically our business model. So companies license our AI technology and use that AI technology. Some of you use it without realizing you're using it, but they use our AI technology behind the scenes. So that's our revenue model. Vision 2020 is just
revenue model.
Yeah. So I mean, I hope everybody understands what that means. You know, Microsoft, when you buy Microsoft license their software to big companies, and that's how they make their money, right? But we do.
Yeah, what's funny that you mentioned that. I remember back in the day, you could buy like Microsoft Word flat out for like $150. Now you got to pay for a yearly renewal.
Yeah, because there's more money to be made here.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, but it's a better business model for them.
Yeah, it is.
They make more money. You know, somebody asked me once, okay, so Vision, you know, if somebody came to you and gave you $1 billion for the company, would you take it? Guys, I'm not stupid. I know what $1 billion is. I'm not saying my company's worth that. I'm just saying everything has a price, right? So to speak. But the point is that we're not that fortunate for somebody to offer us $1 billion, because there was a question somebody asked me on another program. But the other question I get a lot is so other than how we finance it, right? A lot of people want to know how we. As I said, the biggest impetus for us behind Vision 2020 is when we're a small company, and when we start to expand, the challenge we find is that if we put a position out, almost no one looks like us applies for it. Is that acceptable? When we put a position out, even an internship position, when we put those out, we don't see. And by the way, Dynast, some people say, well, you're not looking at the right place. Nonsense. We go typically where people like us would be, and we put this thing out, right? Because people like to find excuses. Just take it from me. We do our due diligence, right? I'm not here saying to us, you know, I mean, basically what I'm saying is there's a tremendous opportunity in technology. We're underrepresented. In the United States, less than 3% of us are in this business. Is that acceptable in a country where we make up almost 14%? In Africa, generally speaking, it's about 50%. You would think it's 90%, right?
Right.
But no, a lot of the technology comes from outside, and people who support it comes from the outside. Do you know in Kenya right now, most startups don't look like people who do startups don't look like us. Those are facts.
I read that.
Those are actual numbers. Huh?
I read about that.
Yeah. See, here's the thing, Dynast. There are some hard truths that we as a group of people have to recognize.
Right.
And I'm not saying, look, I'm saying we are in a really good position because there are people like me and others, right? One of the things, you know Wood Meyer, right?
Oh, yeah.
How often do you see him trying to help people and people keep still thinking there's a catch to what he's trying to do? People still think there's a catch to what he's trying to do. Some of us realize that we can't get to the mountaintop by ourselves, nor do we want to get up to the top by ourselves. I'm saying that it's unacceptable that we make up a certain percentage of the population and we don't have enough people in technology. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying I am not just going to come here and talk, because what happens is a lot of these programs are just talk. Not so much on this channel, but the point I'm saying is a lot of people just do talk. I have put my money where my mouth is, and I'm saying, okay, go try it for yourself. Go kick the tires, right? Tell your friends, tell your whatever, right? Tell your kids in particular, because the reason I'm saying this is because, and the reason is because teenagers, technology, kids pick up technology faster than adults.
Right.
Funny enough, when I was on your program the last time, this Sunday, somebody called me. And they called me and they said they're signing up for their daughter. The daughter was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. And the daughter likes programming, at least wanted the program. And so they were signing up, and he called me and I said, well, what was the issue? And he said, well, I'm at the sign up thing. What do I do? And I'm like, get out of the way and let your 8-year-old kid do that, because your 8-year-old kid is going to finish that application form, done. And guess what? That's exactly what happens. So the reality is the reality is that that is the issue. We, as a group, need to look out for each other. Need to not just look out for each other, but begin to fight. That group dynamic, when you come across something new, you tell and you share and you collaborate. When you see a new business that's starting, you get involved with that new business, you support the business, you don't just pay lip service to it, right? These are things we all know to do, and a lot of your audience are doing that already, Dynast. But I'm saying for those who might come across this who are not doing that, they need to do that. And we can't just tell kids to do something, right? We can't just tell kids to go learn, gain the knowledge. We have to create a platform for them to do it. And that is what Vision 2020 is. Now, if some of you out there are brilliant technologists and want to partner with us, that's the other piece of that I didn't talk about. And so I'm going to kind of talk about this piece, because the piece that you were asking earlier about partnering, the AI technology we have is, we're looking for partners in Africa, people in Africa, specifically, right? And who understands technology, who, you know, if you have an idea that you want to pitch to us, bring the idea, but do me a favor, take some time and think the idea through, because what I don't want is for people to have some idea that just cross their mind and they come to me and expect me to flesh it out for them. Do some homework. And if you know, like for example, if you're in the retail space, we have a lot that we offer. The company has a lot that it offers for the retail, from a retail perspective, right? And we didn't talk much about this, Dynast, but let me just give you a little insight as to the AI side of things, the business part, right? So today, 98% of what we call e-commerce is done through your browser. So that is to say, you know, the company has a website, whether it's Amazon or whatever it is, they've got a website. Or
quick question, since we're talking about e-commerce, why didn't companies like Sears, JCPenney, Lord and Taylor's, all these other companies adapt to that?
They died because they died because of a couple of things. One, having been in corporate America, I can tell you that there's an expression in here.
I can tell you right now, the old people on top are just resistant to change. I already know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're and also when I go and talk to some of these companies, right? The people in there, they are very protective. The technology people in there are very protective of their little space. But what happens is if you don't bring new ideas and new concepts in, so market what Amazon did, and by the way, we can have our own Amazon in Africa, we can have our own Amazon in other in Asia and wherever else, right? It doesn't have to be just dominant Amazon in America. But the idea here is that the 95% of 97% of commerce, e-commerce, goes through your browser. Right. So in other words, you go into the browser, you type something in, and you go to Amazon.com and you type something in and you purchase it. Well, over time, what is going to happen, and it's beginning to happen right now, is instead of going online through a browser, you're going to be talking to your AI. So for example, you say to your AI, hey, you know, I'm going to a wedding. The AI says, okay, Dynast, I see you're going to a wedding. You know, are you going to get an outfit to go to the wedding? Yes, I'm going to get an outfit. AI already knows your measurements and all that stuff. It also knows your budget, you know, what your kind of budget space is, right? So it then presents you a list of things. So Mr. Dynast, these are a curated list of clothes that we think, you know, that was done by some fashion model someplace, not fashion model, some fashion designer someplace, and it's presented to you. And you say, okay, I'll take number 3, and you purchase it that way. Have you gone through a browser? No. And that, what I just explained to you, is going to happen more and more and more. So that creates what I call a closed relationship. A browser, anybody can, it's an open business model, meaning some company in Africa today can start up today, create a website, and then spend money on advertising and drive people to the website, and they're in business. But when you're in AI space, there is no browser to go to like that. So you have to have a relationship with the AI. So now you realize that the AI becomes the front guy instead of the browser becomes the front. The AI becomes the front because the same way that Dennis, you don't walk down the street and go pick up a payphone. You just pick up your cell phone and talk.
Right.
Right? It's the same way when you're dealing with your AI, right? Do you know what size tire your car is? Tire your car use?
Dang, I just got
All right, I got you. Don't worry about that. 99.9% of people don't know.
Yeah.
But your AI would know that because you say, hey, I got a 2019 BMW 325i. The AI knows, okay, so this uses a size 16 tire. Done. So you see, the AI makes your life a lot easier, right? It makes your life a lot easier. And so what I'm saying is that layer between the consumer and the business itself that actually supplies the stuff, that's where the AI sits, right? And it's a lucrative opportunity because trillions of dollars pass through that layer. And the question is, so when somebody comes on our platform and they learn to write AI coding, they themselves can write code to participate in some of that transaction. So there's a revenue model also for people who come on here to learn. I didn't mention that up front because I don't want people to come to it thinking that they're going to make millions of dollars. They code it. What I want them to understand is the intrinsic value of learning technology, so that you can then empower yourself. And if you have a brilliant idea, you can execute the brilliant idea. So let me just repeat what I just said. So Dennis wants some tires for his car. He just says to the AI, hey, Argon, I need some tires. Argon says, okay, Dennis, then well, you have a BMW, and I'm upgrading you, Dennis, in case that's not what you have. Or maybe you drive a Ferrari and we don't know. So in that case, I'm downgrading you. But the point is that you got this car and the AI knows all about the car. And so now it can order the tire for you and also schedule the place where the tire is going to be put on, right? So all of that is done for you by the AI. So that is kind of, that's a simplified version of what the AI is going to do, but you take that times trillions of times. And I'm saying to you, and I'm saying to anybody who's listening, that's a significant opportunity. And when you look at Africa and realize that, because Africa has so much potential, because Africa, the market isn't as developed as America or the United Kingdom or Europe for that matter. So that leaves tremendous business opportunity for commerce and e-commerce, right? And AI commerce, right? Africa is going to leapfrog. You see how Africa doesn't have a lot of landlines because they leapfrogged the landlines and just went straight to wireless, right? They went straight to cell phones, right? Because landlines are notoriously expensive and they're old technology. So Africa said, you know what? We're not even going to bother with that. We're just going to leapfrog this technology and go straight into cellular. So the same way I'm saying to you that a lot of the commerce things that were built in the West, those things are things that are not really pertinent to Africa, because as we go forward, we don't want to go recreate those things. We want to recreate the new cool stuff. So I'm saying to you that, when we look for partner, we look for people who understand commerce, who understands business, who now knows that, okay, because what we have is the tools, but what we want are smart people who can look at the tool, can say, oh, I've got the tool, I can go to a business person and I can show you how this is going to create new spaces for you. Because it was earlier I was speaking to a gentleman, and he was telling me, his argument was, if you have an online presence, anybody in the world can come to your store. And that's a true thing, right? Because you can now sell. This program that we're on right now can be watched across any country, across any continent. That is the reality, right? So Vision 2020 is is us giving back to the community and encouraging the community to get into the technology space, right? We're saying to the community, believe you're entitled, right? Believe you're entitled to some of these technology jobs. They pay really good money, right? A lot of these technology jobs pay really good money. So if we break down in the United States and Canada and the UK, the percentages are roughly around the same. We make up about 5% of the people in technology. But in terms of the high income, in other words, not secretaries and stuff like that, but the really high income data analysts, programmers, systems analysts, data architects, all those positions that pay really good money. We make up roughly about 1.5%. So we are actually very, very tiny. So there's lots of room for growth, right? Lots of room for growth. And if you've lost your job during this COVID-19, here's a chance for you to go learn some new technology. Perhaps it's for you, perhaps it's not, but you don't know until you try it. And while you're trying it, bring one of your friends so that when you get discouraged, your friend can say, hey, we need to finish this, right? How long, somebody asked me, how long does it take to learn to write code?
I was going to say, we're going to start closing out in the next 5 minutes.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
All right, good. How long does it take to learn to write code? There are two conditions to that. One is how interested you are. If you're really earnestly trying to learn it, you pay more attention and you learn faster. But let's take the average. Within 2.5 months, you're writing code, really good code. I mean, decent code. Within 6 months, you're writing really, really good code. Now, what does that 6 month look like? So you spend about an hour a day, less than an hour a day. Now, it might not seem like a lot, but do you have the discipline to spend an hour a day on something? Because a lot of people, they say they want to do things, but their actions don't match it up, right? And I've spoken to so many people over the years, and I've seen so many people who say they want to do things. But when it comes time to deliver or times to put their energy in or the effort in, they don't. And I'm trying to encourage you to say, just give it a couple of months and you'll be surprised, right? Once you learn the basics, there are templates that are there to teach you to write even more advanced stuff, right? And the final thing I'm going to say regarding that is what you learn on Vision 2020, the language you learn, right? That language is compatible with C++ and is compatible with Java. So for those of you who understand programming, you understand what I'm saying here. In other words, it's the same basic syntax. So once you learn on our platform, the skills are transferable. You can take that to go work for some company over here, right? So you can reach out to us if you need to. We are online, by the way. It's Argon AI. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And it's ARGHON AI, right? So just, that Twitter, just put @Argon AI, ARGHON AI, right? So, and Twitter and Facebook, we're on that as well. Now, finally, now that you have a platform that you can come and you can learn, I have just one requirement of you. Share it with your friends. We took the time to create this platform, not just for you, but for your friends. Even your enemies, guys, share with your enemies. I don't care who you share with, but share with somebody. Because we took the time to create this platform so that you can learn a skill. You can get a job, right? And as I said, a typical programmer who knows C++ in the United States makes over $100,000 a year. Are you making $100,000 a year? Or are you making $50,000 a year? You can go, right? Now, you need some little bit of experience to get $100,000. But again, if that's going to be your future, you spend the time to learn it, right? So I implore you to remember group dynamics. When you come across some new idea, share it, because when you share it with, especially among your kids and their friends and your friends' friends, you increase the odds that even if one of them becomes successful, you become part of that. Mm-hmm. So group dynamics works, right? When you get an opportunity to help somebody, my mom used to say, run and do it, because people run to do destruction. You run to do good. When somebody comes to you and says, can you get me into your job? Can you get me into a position in your company? Help them. Go the extra mile and help them, because you never know. Sometimes, the guy who becomes your boss might be the one who protects your job because you're the one who helped them get the job, right? Don't be like some people who just think it's me, and share. And finally, believe in yourself. Believe you're entitled. to the best education, to the best jobs, to the best schools, to the best friends, to the best family, to any good thing that is best. You believe you're entitled. And if you believe you're entitled, you will fight for it. And no one will come in and take it from you without a fight. No one will tell you that you can't do it without a fight. And if you're willing to fight for it, I promise you, that if you're willing to fight for anything, and you're willing to fight for as long as it takes, you will get the thing you're fighting for. You will get the reward. And the people around you will be the better for it. That's essentially Dynast. Dynast, I want to thank you personally for this opportunity.
No problem.
You mentioned artificial intelligence has a huge opportunity in Africa. And I just touched on the surface here. So if you're definitely interested in this, and by the way, Dynast, you're a salesman, and I'd like the book. Get off your button. There's the book. There you go. Get off your whatever, and go do it. That is how you do it. That Dynast right there on his book cover is telling you how you do it. You have to get off your and do something. It's not going to come to you, right? He called it cold call, but whatever that cold call is, you do it, and you will see the results. All right, Dynast?
Mm-hmm. No problem. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Sorry about that. Again, like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, family, Dynast Amir, search for Huru. Peace.